2020 changed the trajectory of my life forever. I was 24, succeeding in a job that offered huge financial reward, yet I was unhappy and unfulfilled. My chronic illness, cystic fibrosis, had caused my lungs to bleed, and it left me in a hospital bed. Now, I left that job and created this podcast, and I left that hospital bed to run marathons and prove that we aren't defined by our circumstances, but rather how we respond to them. On this show, we discuss the adversity that my guests and I face and how we overcome that adversity. This is A Lot to Talk About. G'day. Welcome back to another episode of A Lot to Talk About. It is your boy, the captain of the ship, the man in charge, Bradley J. Driver. Of course, you can call me Brad. Blessed to be here with one of my best mates, a man who I actually met sitting here in these two seats. Well, not these two exact seats, but two seats similar to them in this exact lounge room about a year and a half ago now, and shooting a pod. And he's become a great friend. He's become someone who I see very consistently, maybe sometimes too consistently.
Under sufferance.
But no, it's a pleasure to be here. Zac Lomax, Dragons star centre. Talk of the town at the minute, which we'll get into, but I'm just a very good friend and a guy that I go to for positive vibes, for good feedback, for genuine, real, honest conversations, and that's what we hope to do here today.
Yeah, it's geez, you've nailed that intro all the time, eh? It's the captain of the ship. That's debatable, depends how you look at it. But geez, you've had a few of them nowadays, haven't you, the big boy? But
100%.
Yeah, good to have you back. We're only just saying when you first got here, it feels like a long time ago now, because there's been, we pretty much catch up every day, if not every second day. So time flies, huh?
100%, it does. And the funny thing is, like I've said to a lot of people, one of the things that I love about the podcast is you meet people who come on as a guest. Because you sit down and the first conversation you ever have with someone on a podcast it's usually deep. Well, that's the way that this show rolls. And those deep conversations tend to forge better relationships. But particularly with you, I would call most of the people who've come on the show friends or acquaintances. But particularly with you, I think we connected on that like-mindedness of, the love for family, the passion to continue to be better and develop as men, and a couple years between us, but it feels like we're on very similar trajectories in life, but just in different areas, in different fields,
Yeah, absolutely. It clicked pretty, straight away, hey?
100%.
It was funny how it come about. Remember when you actually first messaged me, and then it only took me a couple of days to get back to you. But
oh, bullshit. It took this bloke 6 months to get back to me. So long so that I actually kind of had forgotten that I'd reached out to him until I took a minute to think, why do I have a DM from Zac Lomax? Oh shit, I reached out to him ages ago, back in COVID times, and we eventually made that chat happen. And, really you've robbed yourself of an extra 6 months of friendship. So,
yeah, it was actually, you know what? It's actually funny because I remember and I only told you the other day.
Yeah.
But I remember, and we used to go down to, myself and a couple other boys used to go down to North Beach there at Diggy's and grab a coffee in the morning. Always used to see yourself always be popping up, wrapped in a tiara. Sometimes you had the heart rate monitor on. You're always smiling, waving, kissing babies, patting dogs. Oh, there was always something happening. We always used to just go, who is this bloke? And there was one of the boys that were actually sitting with us, and we used to take the piss out of him, thinking that you were best mates because he actually knew you, and he used to come up to us a few times and say hello to him, and so we used to sort of take the piss. But it's funny, things happen. I personally thought you were a bit of a loser, but it's funny. The ball's I guess it's changed and it's done a whole 180, and now we're best mates, as I said, under sufferance sometimes, but it is what it is.
It's funny how, we spoke about, when you shared that story, I found it hilarious, and we spoke about first impressions are not always the correct impression, right? And, just to tell a little side story, one of my other really good mates, Joey Dixon, who's actually coming over for dinner tonight, Joey, he recalls walking past me every morning through COVID and just saying, fuck, who's this dickhead with the leopard print hair? Like, if anyone's followed me for a while, I used to have leopard print hair around the back and sides. A bit of a Dennis Rodman inspiration off the back of The Last Dance. And then he met me a couple of weeks later, and he recalls going home and going, you know that dickhead with the leopard print hair? Fuck, what a good bloke. So, first impressions can be deceiving, but enough of the side stories. We're here today to talk a little bit of life and some mindset stuff, and, really excited for this particular chapter of the pod. This will actually be the first episode of season 4. We're entering a new season of the pod. It's, 3.5 years now in the running, and it's cool because I feel like I've really found my way, found my path, which is, there are so many men within that mid-20s to mid-30s range who are at that point in life now that we're at, where, you've got some goals you want to move towards and conquer. You've got direction, vision for your life. You know who you are, or you're at least figuring out who you are. And you're like, what do I want from my life and how do I get there? And, I know who I am. I know what I want from my life. And I'm trying to figure out that third piece of the puzzle. Like, how do I get there? How do I piece together those missing pieces of the puzzle so that my life looks like what I want it to look like? And, it's just very exciting for us to be able to sit down and have these conversations as mates consistently. And, this morning I got here a little bit earlier. We walked down to have a coffee before we sat down to do this. And we spoke about Jalen Hurts, Philly Eagles quarterback. And he's a man who just drops inspirational bomb after inspirational bomb. And, that quote that we were reflecting on where he's like, my favorite verse from the Bible is John 13:7. You may not know now, but later you'll understand. And I feel like that's very relevant to where we're at, both now in our lives, if I can speak for you too, where it's like just trying to figure out how to get to that next stage, to conquer some of those goals, and knowing full well that later on we'll be able to look back at the picture and go, yeah, I understand it clearly now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sort of gone through a bit of a funky situation at the moment where, I wasn't picked in the NRL team. We're going through where we've had obviously there's a fair bit going on with their coach at the moment. He just unfortunately got the sack yesterday, and so it hasn't been ideal at the club at the moment. But I mean, more speaking on myself on a personal level, it's funny you say that verse, but it's so true. For me, it's like it'll all happen how it's supposed to happen, and I just feel like over the last, I guess, few weeks, it's been so good for me, and I've absolutely enjoyed. I've obviously, when I first got told the news, didn't sit too well with me, but I've grown so much as a person, and it really makes you realise the people that sit around you, and I feel my circle is nice and tight at the moment, and it's only gotten smaller, and I feel for me it's been the best thing for me. Like, I mean, I probably deal with the same amount of people every day. It's like only a select few in regards to, yourself. I got a couple other mates I talk to religiously every day, and obviously my mum and dad. Like, so I'm super blessed in that regard. But for me, it's gonna happen the way it's gonna happen. It'll be the way it's supposed to be. And for me, as long as I'm working hard and I stay dedicated, it'll all happen the way it's supposed to happen. And I've believed in that forever. And I feel that, it will be, the ball will bounce my way. And as long as I just keep believing in that and keep sticking to the same process, I'm so confident that it's gonna come out the right way. And as I said, having like good support network around you is the best thing to be able to go through tough times.
We were speaking about it at coffee this morning, that last peak of the mountain, like when you're working your way up and
Absolutely.
You've come through so much to be who you are, where you are, and you're looking at the peak of the mountain and you can see it, and you can know full well that you have everything within you to get to that peak. But it's often that last little climb that's the hardest, and it's the little landslide that sets you back a little bit, and just sort of chips at you a little bit. It chips at that confidence, and it makes you question things, or it makes you have to pivot and move and change the way that you look at that next piece of the puzzle. Personally, I know that in my life right now, there are some goals and some things that I'm trying to achieve that I know I'm so capable of. But when life isn't going to plan, it can really test you and challenge you. And I know one of the things that we speak about consistently is just controlling the controllable. Like, what is within my control, what isn't, and if it isn't, brush it to the side. But when things are in turmoil, like when that news comes out that you've not been selected in the side, obviously emotion comes to the surface because, emotion's important too. It's easy for the media or people on the outside to say, I shouldn't be emotional in that situation. But of course you are, because you care.
Yeah, of course.
So how do you then find yourself in a place where emotion is the first instinct and the first reaction? But then how do you go, okay, I'm going to get myself back to that place of steady thought, breathe first, control the controllable?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy. You can sort of find yourself go down a bit of a rabbit hole if you start to think about, and you can go through and you can dissect it, and you can start to spend so much time and energy towards it, but it just doesn't help in any way, shape, or form. And I find the best thing for me was just to hang around good people all the time. And, I guess by being around good people all the time, then they're not so much feeding you stuff that you want to hear. It's just about being there for a person to, talk to it, I guess, at the same time. But for me, it was just, there was so many things that I couldn't control, that were out of my control. The only thing that I just stayed and kept at the front of my mind is it'll happen the way that it's supposed to happen. But for me, it's like, what can I learn from it? How can I grow more as a human being? And I guess for me, the thing that I've taken out of it is just by being patient, and that's something that I don't have. My patience, as you know, I'm not a patient person. So for me, it's just by understanding to be patient, let things happen the way that they're supposed to, but in the same time, staying as consistent, try not to lose any confidence, and staying dedicated at the same point in time. And I feel that I've been able to do that, and it's made me a way better man. Absolutely. Like, I mean, I could have taken it both ways, and I could have let it affect me and get me down and throw my toys out of the cot, but I've really embraced it, and being able to go home and spend time with family, it's one that I don't really get to do often. You actually went out into more over the weekend, and I went back there the week before, and it was so good to get back home and just be around, as I said, people that you love and people that you spend most time to, respect the most. And it was so good. It puts it more into perspective, I guess, a little bit more, where there's a lot more to life than just worrying about a game of footy, which doesn't mean that I don't care in any way, shape or form, but it puts it into perspective a little bit more.
100% it would. And, I think family's always a really important tool and a powerful tool in just grounding yourself, getting yourself back to where you got to be to go and succeed. And, we speak about it a lot. And one of the gems out of the first episode that we ever did together on the pod was you talking to your old man, and your old man saying, you'll play your best footy when you got a smile on your face.
Yeah, of course.
I have to ask, you've gone through this phase where you come into rugby league as like, you see all the comments, the chosen one, right? Which is cool to hear, right? And you come into the game, and there's some expectation, but there's not a lot, because you're a first year rugby league player, you're a rookie, you're a guy who's stepping into a squad with a bunch of the old boys who have been there and done that. And you really show that you've got that silky skill and you've got the capability to come and perform in the top grade. I have to ask you, do you think that this point in time, this little chapter right now that we're in, this season, has this been the hardest part of your rugby league career because of that expectation after a few really good years?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, it definitely... Like, I mean, it definitely knocked me about. Absolutely. I mean, but for me, coming into grade, I base my game off effort, your potential, and I guess having a lot of ability that comes with it. It's like there's a lot of players now that have so much potential and ability, and I guess the strike across the game now with so many different players and teams. For me, I never ever have worried about that. I've just tried to base all my game off effort. I've tried to base every single game off that, about competing on every play, competing on every kick, trying to score. And it's probably got me into trouble a lot of the time, like trying to score. I've probably tried to score on too many plays. But that's the way that I've always played. I've always played that from a young fella. It's like, right, how can I score this play? How can I score there? What can I do here to make a line break, do this, do that? You know what I mean? I'm always thinking like trying to compete and do what's best for the team in regards to, there's probably been times where I'm thinking what's best for the team, but it hasn't been what's best for the team, if you know what I'm trying to say. So in regards to that, I've always just based my game off effort. And it's like sometimes when you put yourself in the picture so many times and you put yourself in the right spot, a lot of the times by competing, the ball bounces your way sometimes, because if you're in there more times than not, the ball it ends up just finding you. So I mean that's the way that, I don't want to be known as the player too that's got potential, and he's skillful, he's got all these attributes. Like, I want to be known from my teammates and people that have coached me and played with me as, he's just that prick that just will not fucking die. He's that prick that will just go and compete on everything. When the ball goes up, Loey's going to go and contest on it, and good things happen around him. You know what I mean? That's the player that I've always wanted to be, even coming into grade. Like, I mean, yeah, as I was saying, that you can have all the skill in the world, but like, that's never what I've based my game around. And it's always been what my old man has driven into me about, mate, you just give 100% all the time. And that's every session, that's all away from footy. But every game, it's, you play with a smile on your face, but you enjoy it by competing. That's how you get your rewards. Yeah. So that's the way that I've always been about it.
Do you think in that respect that the game becomes more mental than physical then?
Yeah, which is sometimes, absolutely. Like, without a doubt, the game is 1,000,000% mental. I feel like you look at every single team in the NRL. You look at every single team in the NBA, NFL, any profession. They're all big, athletic, powerful, fast, mobile humans. So they're all freaking natures. You know what I mean? Like, everyone is gifted in their own way, and there's not much different between all of them. Like, in our team, there's so many big bodies there, but mentally is everything. Like, and you look at, I guess, all these different players or different positions. Halfbacks have a lot more on their plate. Fullbacks have a lot more on their plate. As a centre, you got things that you need to nail too that are different to what your front rower needs to nail. So it's always different. There's so many different aspects that happen all the time, but mentally it's everything. For me, it's got a lot more to do mentally.
Because, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and for the life of me, I can't remember the fella's name, but he's a big name in sort of the health and training space for a lot of professional athletes. And he was speaking about the fact that, back in the day, you used to talk about like outworking in the gym or outworking in practice. But a lot of the time now, it's less about outworking and on the field and outworking in the areas that you can win up on other people, because most people are putting in a lot of work. Like, most guys, like you said, are lifting heavy in the gym, running plenty, keeping their fitness up. It's about how can you outwork someone mentally in your recovery in those little 1% areas that some people neglect. And, I know we have a lot of conversations about the mental. For me, I've identified in my life, I'm better when I'm mentally sharp. Like, when I'm actually taking time every day and spending that time on my mindset. We spoke about it this morning, like wanting to read a little bit more again. We spoke about it yesterday, journaling. Getting back into those spaces where you're creating an environment for yourself to mentally thrive. What are the things for you that are the call to action when you feel like the mental needs to sharpen up a little bit, or just maybe even the daily things that you're spending your time on that make you mentally sharper and then allow you to compete?
I think for me, it's like not worrying about things that I can't control, because you can easily get hung up on that. And a lot of the time I worry about a lot of the time is well, I'm putting in all this effort, but we're not getting the rewards for the effort that we're putting in. And sometimes it might not look that way, but it's, you can control what you can only control what you can control, you know what I mean? So I guess it's the effort that I put in leading up to the game, which is everything that I'm doing back here. So you talk about your journaling, and it's like understanding things that you're grateful for. I feel like that helps me so much. It's your stretch and your recovery that you're doing away from it. I try and keep in contact with my family as often as I can, and that helps me tick as well. So it's everyone's different, but for me, it's the mindset is my recovery a lot of the times, because I guess during the season, like your body's just on a different level sometimes, meaning it's seriously banged up, and like not being able to. We were talking about actually LeBron James just before watching the basketball, just saying like he spends millions of dollars a year on it. I mean,
For sure.
Ideally I would too if I was getting paid as much as him, but yeah. So for me, just trying to have a routine for me in regards to recovery, keeping in touch with the people that I'm close with all the time about, if they think that I can improve on some things. But for me, that's the thing that helps me the most, is by keeping in touch with them and nailing my recovery a lot of the time, especially when it gets to the back end of the season.
It's hard. You spoke there before about like you can overthink when you're not getting the results. I know that as a player at the Dragons right now, you're not happy with how the season's going. But, there were like 6 games there back to back or particularly 4 of them, where you're in it until the last minute. Like you're losing by a point against the Chooks, a couple of points, whether it be 4 points, 2 points in a few of those games. They're neck and neck. It's easy to look at those results as a fan when like your heart's in it and you're like, oh, I want the boys to be winning, and be disappointed. But when it's that close, against some really good quality outfits, when it's that close, sometimes it's not too much about the result. Like the effort's there. It's something that maybe just takes a little bit of time for the execution to come into play. To go back to Jalen Hurts, he spoke about Super Bowl. He's like, I don't put too much emphasis on results. Yeah, of course they're important. It's a business. Of course I want to win games of football, but it's like I had a purpose well before anyone had an opinion.
Yeah.
It's like knowing that purpose to come and be better every day, to work on that game. That doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. Don't go from Z to A in the space of a day.
Yeah.
It's a matter of like patience, persistence, and continuing to rock up, continuing to know what that purpose is and what that shared purpose and a team perspective is.
And for me, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, we had a few games where we lost by, obviously a small margin, which hurts and deflates you a lot. But for me, it was not letting that discourage you, which is you can easily let that come into play when it's only by such a small margin and you're giving everything to it. But it's going back to what I was saying earlier, it happens the way it's supposed to happen, and it can be discouraging at some points, and it feels like for us, because we've been like it for a few years now, where it's been hard and we haven't been seeing results. But it's definitely made me the person that I am today.
For sure.
I mean, I don't regret anything. For me, I've been able to meet so many new, beautiful people over my time coming in and out of footy, and I've learnt so much as a footy player and as a rugby league player, and it's taught me so many life lessons. I mean, I moved away from Temora when I was 15, moved away from my hometown at a young age, went to a different school, moved away from friends and family, and that was all I knew back there. I was so comfortable back there, but to come down here and to be able to do something that you love and go and move away from things from what you know, being a little country boy, like we had the same 20 people in our year, going to having more people in my year down here than our whole school. It's an eye opener, but at the end of the day, it's a game, and yeah, we absolutely bust our ass every single day at training, all year, pre-season, off-season, like for it. But at the end of the day, we're you're busting your absolute ring all for it. You know what I mean? And,
Sure.
and you're giving your absolute all for it. But yeah, and it can be deflating at sometimes. Let me tell you, because it absolutely plays on your mind a lot. It's, as I said, like as most rugby league players will tell you, it's an emotional roller coaster. But it all happens for a reason. It teaches you lessons every game, and you reassess, you understand as to where things could have gone wrong, where you can understand and go better. But for me, I've learnt that just working hard, being dedicated, things will pay off the way that they're supposed to happen. It'll all happen how it's supposed to happen, and I live by that.
Definitely. You know, for me, the three things that I really focus on that are in my control every day, or well, not even on an everyday level, but on a life level, on a yearly level, the things that I look at are my beliefs. You know, like what you believe is what you become. I'm big on that. Second one is my actions. You know, like how am I showing up in the world? I can have all these beliefs, but if I don't act accordingly, I'm not the man that I say that I am. The third thing is my perspective. And if we go to that third thing, perspective, you know, you're talking about coming from a great family, having great people around you, coming into the NRL at an early age. There's a lot of wins there, right? There's a lot of wins on the board. I think this stage, this challenge, these things that aren't necessarily going to plan, the things that maybe the outsiders would brand as failures or things gone wrong, are so important. It's a reason why I've said in my life, I come from the best family and I've had the most amazing upbringing, the most amazing people in my life. I went to a great school. You know, I come from a real middle-class family where I never went without. The greatest thing that has ever happened to me, the greatest lesson I could have ever learned, was being born with cystic fibrosis, because it meant that some shit was going to go wrong. And what I've learned from things going wrong, from the adversity I've had to face, has made me not only humble as a man, if I can say that about myself. I hope that I can. I hope that people back me up on that. The thing that it's taught me is that everything in life is earned through persistence, hard work, that fight, and understanding that, you know, nothing in life comes easy if it's worth having. And I think in a similar regard, you're going through this stage now where things haven't gone right, but they've gone wrong for a reason, because there's lessons to be learned. You know, you spoke about, and I agree with you, being a better man today than you were a couple of weeks ago because of what you've had to go through. Man, we learn things from these lessons, and these lessons are so important in informing us as men in life. And, you know, I'm big on that now. Like, what kind of man do I want to be? You know, I've got a partner I love and I want to show up and be great in my relationship. I want to have kids in the next couple of years. I want to be someone who can provide for his family, who can show up on a shit day and still be positive and smiling, and make sure that challenge or that adversity doesn't rub off on my kids or my family, and doesn't rub off on the people that I love. And, you know, when I get a call from you to say, hey, I need help with X, or, you know, a call from another mate to say I need help with Y, I want to be able to show up and be a good mate. And I think it's these moments, these challenges that teach us the lessons we need to go and do that in life.
Absolutely. And I mean, as you were saying before, like, I mean, with footy, yeah, we haven't got the results that we would have had liked to over the last few years, absolutely, but that's through no lack of trying, let me tell you. But there's no way in the world that I'm going to let that affect me in regards to the man that I am. Like, it's only shaped me into the man that I am in a positive way, and it's all going to happen the way that it's supposed to happen, and I believe in that 1,000,000%. But it's as I was saying, I'm not. It won't deter me away from working hard, staying consistent, but it can easily affect you when you feel like you're already doing that stuff, but you're getting zero reward for it. It can become deflating at sometimes, but going back to me saying before, having the right people around you and the right support team with you and family, and I've been blessed with the ideal mum and dad as well, and I'm super thankful for that. But I'm just trying to stay as consistent as I can and not feed any energy into the negativity that comes with it, because let me tell you, you can dig yourself down a big black hole when you read into it and you actually buy into it, give it energy. Because Jesus, I guarantee if you looked up right now, there'd probably be 10, 12 articles that have been written this morning since me and you have been here. So there's always something going on. I keep myself surrounded by beautiful people that have great energy, and they keep me grounded, and I just try and stay as dedicated and consistent as possible. That's what I focus on from a day to day.
You know, talking about surrounding yourself with good people, I want to hit you with a hypothetical here, right? You know, you've got a beautiful home here, big dining table over there. Let's say you're hosting that dinner party. You get to invite, I'm going to give you 3 people, and I'd love to hear at least 2 athletes. You're inviting to that dinner table to sit down, and not just to talk, but like most people, I'll preface this with, most people wouldn't know the sort of conversations. I think they can imagine you're in the footy world, you know, the people listening, or, you know, fans of the Dragons, they go, Zac's in the footy world. They must sit down at coffee and talk about footy. We never talk about footy.
Never.
Like we might talk about it for 30 seconds at the start of coffee.
People ask me, and even the other day, bro, I was like, I can't remember who I was around, but they were like, oh, how much? Actually, I was down having a hit of golf, and this fella come up to me and said, oh, do you want to have a round of golf with me? And I was like, yeah, bloody oath. Like, went for a round of golf with him, and he goes, oh, and this is after I'd found out everything with footy, and he goes, oh, do you ever watch much footy away from footy? I'm like, no, not much at all. Like, so very, very rarely, do I watch footy away from footy. But it's funny, you and I never really talk about footy. It's only like, what's training like?
Checking after the game, or what's on today. And I think it's always about mindset. So when we come back to that question, you could invite 3 people to your home for dinner to sit down, preferably 2 athletes and 1 other, to talk about the things that you feel like are going to be important for you to make that next leap, to take those next steps in life, and to achieve what you really want to achieve. Who would those people be?
I know we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but for me, he really comes to my mind now is, athlete-wise, Mike Tyson. He would be, I would love to sit down and pick his brain about things. Obviously, you talk and you say, people have said, I've got potential, you've got a lot of skill, blah, blah, and he was that exact person, but he achieved everything at the highest highs from the youngest of age, and he went through it all, and then went to prison, has been in and out, had everything, would have seen everything that life has to offer. So he would know exactly what really, really matters the most in life. He's experienced the highest of everything, and for him, he would really know, and to be able to ask him the question that really makes him tick at the moment, or after he's been through it all, what really matters to him and what actually matters in life he feels at the moment.
It's funny you say Mike, because that's not a name that we've spoken about recently, but I seen a clip the other day from his podcast, Hot Boxing, and I think it was with, is it Eden Britton, the guy that he used to do the show with, the co-host, and they were talking
the bloke that's got the real deep voice.
He's got a sexy man voice on him, and they were talking about sort of the man that Mike is now, and he was saying, you know, I used to be a great man, or I used to want to be a great man, but great men aren't often good men. You know, saying that when you're trying to achieve greatness, there's a level of selfishness, a level of almost narcissism that comes into play with your personality, where it's all about you. But to be a good man in life, you have to be more selfless, and it's a difference. And he's like, you know, now I'm trying to be a good man, and he's like, it's hard for me because I was that great man for so long. I was that warrior in the ring, and in the clip, he's actually tearing up, talking about the man that he used to be, and it sounded so destructive, like to be that guy that goes in and is so relentless. It's something as a society that we can look at and appreciate, but you don't know what goes into it. Like to be that guy in the ring, it's easy to sit on the outside and watch Mike Tyson box people's heads off.
Yeah, of course.
But to be that guy in the ring, you don't know what's going on in their head, and, you know, maybe not what the fans of sport want to hear, but I think, you know, we have to remember that these people are human. Like
of course.
It's been so interesting for me to become great mates with you, and to become great mates with Block as well, and see these guys who my only interaction with prior to starting a podcast was, you know, these guys are athletes, but then to see the real human side and the fact that, like, you know, you still want to be a great partner, you still want to be a great son, a great brother, you know, a great man, a great friend. And to do that, like, you can't be relentless in every area of your life. You know, so I think Mike's a really great example of the fact that he's had to pivot at some point, you know?
Yeah, he'd be the man to interview, bro. Like,
Love his
probably
voice
through
too.
the ringer too.
Yeah.
But
Who's number 2?
Still sports?
Yeah, give me another athlete.
I'd have to go probably LeBron. Like, he's just done it forever and ever, and just to see what makes him tick while still competing at the highest of levels at the moment, just to see how he goes about it. He's got 3 kids, had kids at a young age, has obviously a wife, and just to see how his body still ticks at almost 40, like, yeah, it would be unreal to really see how he still goes about his ways.
You know, the thing I love about Bron is you never read anything that makes you think less of his character. Obviously, the media is going to sell stories and tell stories and put stuff out there that isn't real, but you never hear anything that makes you question the kind of man he is, you know, talking about being a good man. And there was something the other day, I think it was one of the first games, maybe game 1 or 2 of their win against Golden State, and he was talking about being in the sheds just before he started warming up, watching Bryce play, his youngest son. He's like, I watched the first 40 minutes of Bryce's game, and someone directed a question to him in the presser, and he changed the topic and went to, like, oh, you know, I watched the first 40 minutes of my son's game, and, like, you know, that really got me in a good place to come out and play some really good basketball tonight. And I'm like, that's a guy who has the world at his fingertips, who is so esteemed and respected in his sport, who's in that question of the GOAT in basketball, but he's remained a really good man, a really good family man, a guy who's not just talking about his family. You can genuinely see he's spending a lot of time with his family, and fuck, I respect that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, to be multifaceted like that, to be a pluralist, like to put so much focus on so many really important areas of your life and to execute well in all of them. He's like a man who knows his purpose, he knows his direction.
And the thing that I find, like, so fascinating about him at the moment, like, since I've always been a fan of him, the thing that I find most fascinating is his passion still for it. Like, he's done everything in the game, but he still turns up all the time. He dedicates so much time to it, even everything away from the field. It's like, why is his mentality still like a young lion? You know what I mean? And
still
that's
hungry.
that's what I admire so much.
To quote once again, one of the most inspirational characters on the planet at the minute, Jalen Hurts. I seen another video the other day where he was saying that one of his coaches said to him, you know, hungry dogs run faster, and he's like, man, I'm not hungry, I'm fucking starving for this. And, you know, that's that young lion mentality, right? Like, you want it so bad that you work for it, you know, you do everything to make sure that you're moving in that direction. And it's inspirational to see someone who remains so passionate after so long in that space, a space that can be incredibly rewarding, but as you know, in your sport, it can also be incredibly fucking tough when things aren't going to plan. And you know, he's had his seasons that aren't great, and he's had his challenges with his body at stages, but he finds a way to always come back with that same passion and mentality. What do you think that is? Where does that come from? Like, that continued passion, that fire's always burning. Is that?
I think just wanting to be the best.
It's just, and it's
not leaving a stone unturned. Like, I mean, and that's just the competitive nature. It's like wanting to be the best. Absolutely. Like, I mean, that's like, I mean, not everyone's like it. Absolutely not, because I've had a heap of different like mates over the years that are just, even in all aspects of life, like with different jobs and with that. But I mean, it's just wanting to be the best at whatever he is. Like, I'd imagine he'd be the same with any kind of sport or profession he's in. Like, I mean, them traits aren't built, I feel. Like, they're in your DNA.
You tend to pick that up. We've spoken about it on our second app that we done together with like Joshy and Jimmy. Like you were this competitive little fucking child that wouldn't let anyone beat him, and like it's that ingrained in you. Yeah, it's an interesting question whether that can be taught, that hunger. I think it comes from I don't know that it can't be developed later. My thought is maybe that it takes certain things in your life, certain experiences to develop it.
Yeah.
Because I would say that I lost it for an element of my life. Like I was a really competitive young kid because I understood that I had to work harder than anyone else to be great at the things I'd done athletically because of my CF. And so I worked my ass off. Like I trained so much as a kid and I trained really hard to win state championships when I was sprinting and doing that stuff. And then I got a little bit complacent in life when I got sort of to my 20s, my early 20s, and I lost that. But then when I started to have some hardship again, like when my health was really testing me and I was in hospital and, and there were some grim diagnoses for infections and the fact that some of them could have been fatal or, the bleeding in the lungs and the question of whether you were going to live, those sort of things sort of lit that fire in me again. I think sometimes life experiences can light that fire.
Yeah, that's very fair.
But it's interesting because I think for a lot of people it is inbuilt. It's in their DNA.
Jeez, I was a sorest loser when I was younger.
So was I.
For me,
mate, when the Chooks lost
jeez,
as a kid, and I'm not even in that game, when the Chooks lost, I'd cry.
It was almost like I look at it and I just go, jeez. It was almost a little bit embarrassing. Like I'd throw tantrums and it's funny. You go back and you're watching like tape of when I was younger and I was playing footy back home in Temora, and so you're watching tape of you playing younger footy, and I'm like, they're sitting after a try's been scored against, and I'm sitting there, I just throw the towel in and I'm just so filthy. But it's made me the person that I am. Like that's who I am now. Like, but you look back at it and you go, geez, that's embarrassing. Geez, I wish I didn't act like that. But I'm like, that's got me to where I am today.
For sure.
Like, without a doubt, me having that hunger and that drive and that passion for wanting to be the best has got me to where I am. Yeah, without a doubt. And it's probably my best trait, to tell you the truth.
That competitiveness, that drive.
Yeah. And it absolutely annoys the shit out of so many people that I'm like it. But, I mean, it's good fun too. I actually, because it's just the way it makes me, that's just the way I tick. But I get a lot of fun out of it too. But sometimes it can shit me to death.
Well, I think it's also the fact that, who you are on the field, you're the same person, but there's a different mentality.
Yeah.
And, like I was telling you, a mate of mine played some footy against you growing up, like locally, and he said to me, "What's Lomax like in real life?" He goes, "Because God, he was a prick on the field because he was just so good." He's like, he was so like confident and cocky on the field because he was so, and he's like, he had every right to be because he was great. But he's like, I always just thought that maybe that was kind of how he was in life too. And he's like, then I seen him hanging out with you, and a bit of a compliment he gave me. He goes, "Driver doesn't hang out with dickheads."
Yeah.
So it's funny how that mentality can be different on the field, and it almost has to be.
Yeah.
You don't get props for opening the door for someone to score a try on the field. Yeah. But in life, you open the door for the old lady who's walking behind you. You're not relentless in life like that too.
Yeah, of course. I'm definitely a mummy's boy.
Yeah, you are, for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely a mummy's boy. So, I don't know. Off the field, it's funny. Everyone's so different. Some people can be so different on the field, but, their traits definitely come out.
Still a part of them.
Yeah, of course.
Talk to me about that third person at the dinner table. This one is that it can be an athlete, it doesn't have to be.
If I was just going to go knowledge based on who I'd want it, I have to pick probably two more.
Okay. Add an extra seat.
Yeah, I would, if I had to go knowledge, just on someone that I would love to just sit down and wouldn't be able to talk enough to him, would be Denzel and Morgan Freeman.
One thing I love about Denzel, I feel like all I do on this podcast when I speak to you boys is just drop quotes from those people you mentioned.
Yeah.
There's a great Denzel quote. He says, ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, isn't that bang on? Like, it's what we spoke about before, right? Like, those hardships, those lessons you learn through hardship are really forming to be the man that you want to be.
Yeah.
You know, I love those stories, and I find so much inspiration. Like, for me personally, and a big part of the reason I do the podcast is I've learnt the greatest lessons in life from other people through hearing their story.
Yeah.
And in hearing someone's story, you pick up that actionable insight. Like, you know, how did they face that challenge, or how did they face that little piece of adversity in their life, and what can I learn from the way that they face that? And I think that's the beauty of storytelling, right? We're all just teaching each other things as we move along, and you know, hopefully I learn lessons from you as you face challenges in life, that when those challenges become present in mine, I know how to handle them and how to deal with them and keep my head held high, and hopefully vice versa, you know. As we sort of wrap up here, you know, I feel really blessed for our friendship because, you know, there is, don't get me wrong, there is plenty of banter there. There is plenty of...
This is the most serious conversation you and I have ever had.
You reckon?
It's up there.
It's up there. It's up there.
Yeah.
There's usually that little, like, we chip away at each other a little bit, but I'm always very thankful for the fact that the base of everything we discuss is always at trying to help each other be better men.
And that's the thing that it's always
trying
about.
to grow and, you know, being able to have that fun in that journey and enjoy and take the piss out of each other along the way.
Yeah. And that's the thing that it's always been. Like, it's always, how can you help me? How can I help you? And that's why we click straight away, and that's all it's ever been about. It's like, well, I'm always thinking for you and you're always thinking for me, and that's why, yeah, we get along so well, and I love it. Like, it sort of takes away me from footy. I don't need to worry too much about footy. You probably don't think too much about your job and how it's going. It just clicks. It's just easy, you know, and it's effortless, which helps.
For
like,
sure.
It's like there's no effort that needs to be put in. It just happens. It just happens naturally, which is almost how you do your podcast. You just speak naturally, like, and you can just have conversations with people naturally, where I can just play football naturally, and when I'm doing it naturally, I play my best footy.
For sure.
And
in that flow state.
That's like our friendship, which is all sort of, it all marries up together in the end, which is pretty cool. But except for your golf game, I'm yet to see your golf game, and I heard that you can't. You're not too great.
You've heard some pretty accurate stories.
But let me tell you, you're the best cinnamon scroll eater I've ever seen. Let me tell you.
That's rich coming from the bloke who has one every time or else.
With a different coffee every day, you do that one.
Such a pleasure to be sitting here having another conversation on the pod, not just a conversation in life. I do want to give you one last opportunity, though, before we leave. We said there's going to be a lot of people right now who are reading articles and seeing stories with your name plastered across papers and news articles everywhere. You know, they're going to read what they're going to read. I would like to say that not many people know you like I know you. I want to ask you now, in your own words, what's a message that you want to leave with the people who are listening, who are watching this, to understand and to put at the actual top of their research list right now about where you're at and what's to come?
For me, and my mum says this to me a lot, and she actually sent me a video of it not too long ago. But for what's to come and what I believe in is, and what my mum always says to me, when a door closes, a window opens. Don't focus and get hung up on the door, but worry about the window. And it all ends up happening how it's supposed to happen. So that's what I'm focusing on. And I'll just be smiling in the meantime and hanging around people I love. And life's good.
I love it, brother. Thanks so much for being a part of the show.
Love you.
Love you. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of A Lot to Talk About. It means the world that you guys are in my corner, that you continue to listen to the show every week. And if you could do me a massive favor by following the podcast on whichever platform you listen to it, and sharing this episode in particular with just one friend that you feel would benefit from it, that would mean the world to me, and it would help the show grow. The more the show grows, the bigger the guests we get on, the more that we can do, and the more we can share and support you guys, the listeners, the viewers of the show. Before I go, I want to pay my respects and recognise the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and record this podcast. The Aboriginal culture has such a rich history in storytelling, and as a passionate storyteller, I really hope that the stories we share and connect with on the show can allow the many cultures that now call this beautiful land Australia their home to come together and continue to respect the stories and the culture that make this the land it is today. Thank you so much for tuning into A Lot to Talk About. I'll catch you next week.